so nicely to what we were saying earlier about like slot machines, chance, like just trying things, yeah, hedging bets and building
Yeah.
things up because I feel like again, like obviously the original girl boss movement has its flaws. At the same time, like I was in the perfect era to believe that, yeah, very much also believe that narrative and be like very much be like, yes, this is the time to feel like, yeah, that there are empowering elements to it, really. At the same
Yeah,
time, I
of
just
course.
feel like, sorry?
No, I was just saying, of course. I was agreeing
Yeah.
with you. Go ahead.
And but I feel like then, yeah, because of sarcasm and everything, like it has
Hmm.
lost and developments, it's lost its original meaning. But now, again, just the way specifically, like no mention, nowhere where I see people talking about specifically Girl Boss Too Close to the Sun is serious. Like everyone is just being
Right.
intensely sarcastic. And I think, again, there are like these two elements to it. I feel like the kind of like backlash against Taylor Swift has been coming up slowly for a while.
Yeah.
And then it's just happened very, very quickly off the back of the album. Like, I mean, again, like, yeah, looking at the tail end of Gen Z at my kids' school, it's kind of like the two divisions of is Taylor Swift, like, yeah, liking Taylor Swift versus not liking it because it's so
Yeah.
mainstream.
Right.
It's,
Hip Replacement, episode 30, the transitional episode between Gen Z being either. Wait, sorry. What I mean is Gen Z 30 now? Or are they not 30? Anyway, it's
Tech-
episode 30. We're here with Mara Dettman.
It
Yeah,
depends. Depends on the Gen Z person you ask or the millennial that you ask.
yeah,
'Cause
exactly.
it's
Which of our
fluid.
sisters?
Right.
Well, so Kyle, we're here with Mara Dettman. Mara's calling in from the outskirts of London or just outside London. And I know that, but I don't know anything else typically. So please explain.
Yes. So Mara is a strategist, also the writer of the newsletter Interesting Times. Or Interesting Times is a newsletter on Substack. Let me clarify, because she also has newsletters on LinkedIn as well, including one
Real
that is like sort
multi-hyphenate.
of like seriously, and one that sort of like breaks down a weekly trend taxonomies in a really great visual way. Mara also is a recommendation of a previous guest from Jasperin of The Social Juice. He highly recommended you and was like, you guys have to have Mara on the show. And I was like, yes, we do. And here we are.
Jaskrin just Mara, welcome first and foremost.
Thank
I have to say, Jaskrin does all of the work for the entire trend industry. I read his newsletter sometimes, and I'm just like, why am I even bothering anymore?
He
It's
incredible.
I used to think it
well,
was team, but it's just him.
Yeah,
yeah. Well, I
I
mean,
thought the same thing too.
the thing that's, I mean, and I think that's interesting, right? And it gets into Mara a little bit. Like you know, off mic, you said that you thought that saying you like a weekly trend taxonomy was a little pretentious. I don't disagree. I don't agree. I don't agree. I think it's an accurate way to describe it, but it does beg the question, like how in this world of sort of auguring the trends, we are able to distinguish one from another in terms of our output and still add value to conversation. So anyway, congratulations, because I think you've been identified as somebody who does that well.
Yes.
No, no, that's very kind. No, but actually, when I was talking to Jaskrin about it, I was once like, if everyone else is talking about it, I don't want to talk about it because by that time there are already so many voices in it that
Totally.
what can I add to the conversation? So unless there's a very strong point of view or something that an opinion I can add. Otherwise, I'm like, I'm gonna let everyone else weigh in on Taylor Swift's engagement.
Right.
Yeah,
She got
but
engaged.
News to us? No. It's what's funny you say that, because like that has been sort of a like a large it's been taking up more and more of my mind recently, and I usually that doesn't get to me. Usually I'm a very firm believer, and like I will say this to you as well as advice, is that like, your point of view is valuable no matter what. Like that's why people go to you, is because like they want your opinion on that. And I've heard that from myself, and I'm sure Ben, you've heard the same thing. But like
Yeah.
I don't know, like for whatever reason, like in the past month, and maybe it is, and I know we've all read the story from like Financial Times about like social media use going down, but like I feel like in the past month, because of what's happening in the world generally, that feeling has gotten so, for me personally, it's gotten so pronounced in a way. And I was just like, why am I doing this? But like that was sort of like a
Yeah.
bigger mental thing. And like I had think the really nice person who reached out and was like, if you're not feeling good about this, like, hey, take a break. Like, remember the joys of it. And I was like, you're right. You're right. And like, that is a good reminder. It's like, it's not about sort of like the top trend or whatever. It is more about like, what are you finding as far as a joy in that? Because that is useful to people.
Yeah. So, okay. So Kyle, I'm going to offer you a productive on-ramp, and Mara, I want to get your thought on this too. In one of the stories that I shared this week was about how young men are building an alternate value system through prediction markets, right? This is from a newsletter called Hard Space, which I read about through a woman named Caitlin Donnelly, who's a venture capitalist. She publishes a newsletter on Sundays called Declarative Statement, which is a pretty interesting one. It's very venture finance startup-y kind of driven, so you kind of have to care about that stuff to find it super useful. But this piece was essentially around how young men are participating in betting markets, prediction markets, and how that is not just the roulette wheel of the past where the house always ultimately wins, but rather a system that over time is accretive of value because intelligence is what drives the prediction markets. And in many respects, I think what we collectively do in these identifications of trends or just simply, finding, weak signals is adding to that kind of intelligence. So anyway, congratulations guys on building value in a new economy for our peers. But on the other hand, it's difficult to feel like every bet isn't just a bet and instead that it's a contribution.
Well, it's funny because like that story was really interesting. I can probably agree. I think you meet any young person, probably not just Gen Z. I feel like it bleeds definitely into some millennial psychology as well. Is like that need to not necessarily create new systems, but rethink and sort of rip up the playbook, which is what that sort of is getting at. And it even gets at another story that you sent, Mara, about like Gen Z parenting, which sort of is getting at that as well. And I think that it all is speaking to trying to create order in disordered times, as we know. And like, if you're not able to sort of like get anything, then like you're going to build your own ladder, which is like really great. But like, I think the difference was 10 years ago, it was like, oh, I'm going to like be a blogger and like have my own Instagram. And now I think it's, I'm going to have this AI creator that I run and also like play some like little crypto bets and do this and that, which is like, that is way too much work, honestly, for me. But like, it's all of a kind. And like that, it's, as we know, it's symptoms of failing systems, which, yeah.
Yeah, and actually, I thought the article was so interesting, especially because of the whole idea of the term roulette, which really reminded me of like kind of one of the bigger themes I've been seeing this year, which is that whole idea of people being like, give me your most unhinged hacks for this, give me your most unhinged hacks for that, which of course there's like this cute, fun kind of dimension to it, which is like, oh, the conventional advice, the conventional routes to anything really aren't working. What can we do as an antidote to that? But then there is also that kind of like, heavier underside to it, which is just the fact like, yeah, conventional systems aren't working for us. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, tell us what else we can do. But then also, I think opens up all kinds of other avenues. Like, I think this huge rise in like spirituality and elk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Really
Go,
quickly,
Kyle, 'cause
Ben.
I got something.
But this like
Yeah.
this was something else that was on my mind with that too. Is like the idea of spirituality and like all this sort of stuff in this Gen Z soup is like everything is betting culture. Klarna, like pay laters, all that stuff is like betting culture. Your TikTok algorithm, FYP, that is betting culture. What's going to come next? Everything is a slot machine. And like, I'm not the first person to say that. I've read that recently, but it's like everything in the Gen Z imagination mind is a slot machine, even religion. I'm going to pray and like, maybe this thing will happen. I'm going to do this, maybe this thing will happen. And like, sure, that's wishful thinking, which has always existed, but like, that is really unique because like every system or every input in a lot of ways is a gambling device, which is fascinating. And like life has always been that way, but like they are really getting that a lot. Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
Well, no, I think the flip side to that, the counterpoint to it in a certain way, and this is me being the old guy on the pod as usual, is that the one of the reasons that it feels as though the classic means of building wealth, the classic, be patient, create equity over time scenario doesn't work is because we are so used to instant gratification on at every touch point, right? And I had a conversation with somebody last Tuesday at a dinner where she grew up in the neighborhood that we have lived in for the last 30 years. The series producer Campbell grew up in, and so on, which is called Greenpoint in Brooklyn. Greenpoint has become a very desirable place to be and has become a very valuable place to be. When I moved here, it was the literal end of the earth. Nobody wanted to be here at all. And the only reason that I was able to be here was because nobody wanted to be here and it was cheap.
Right.
And that took 27 years to a point where now this house that we live in is very valuable, where we have a very, high standard of living, but it took a really long time. If you are a recent college graduate and you think I'm going to take my 4-year degree, I'm going to move to Greenpoint, you are going to be sadly mistaken. In the same way as I was sadly mistaken when I thought I was going to move to the East Village, or to the West Village rather, when I got out of school in 1998. It just didn't, it wasn't there for me. I had to go somewhere that wasn't desirable. And the fact that you have to wait for that stuff, I don't think this is the place I disagree a little bit with the hard space post. I don't think that that's any less true. It's just that we're not accustomed to waiting. Everything is instant, and so we now look at the thing though that I liked very much about the post as a counterpoint to that was, if we are building systems that compounding over time is mega valuable. It's a way of taking the adversity of the current moment and then addressing it in real time while at the same time building for a longer term system. That I like a lot. And I just think I think you're right, Kyle, about the everything being a betting system now. What I liked about that take was that it was like, it's a betting system, but it's not a betting system where it's either you win or you lose. It's accretive over time.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, and that's a fair point. And I think the other sort of element in the room with the gambling training and with the social media instant gratification training is like the other thing that we have to take into account. This isn't everybody, obviously, but when we think about like Nepal, Madagascar, Morocco, Philippines, all these sort of like Gen Z revolutions, those are getting at a sort of like, and, perhaps the buy now, pay later things, they're sort of getting at a like, I don't know about the future. I don't know is there going to be a planet? Is there going to be a this? Fuck it, burn it down. And like, that is a very extreme take, but I do think that sort of like, that is a very in your 20s thing. I think if you talk to anybody in their 20s at any point in history, they're like, I'm not living beyond 30. That might have been true in like 1600s, but like when I was in my 20s in the 2010s, that wasn't true. But I was like convinced, I was like, the day I turn 30, I'm just going to be like struck by lightning and die for no other reason than like that seemed like a nice time to quote unquote die. But strange thinking. But anyway, that idea I think plays into like, your 20s feeling like that's the end in a strange way, and then like the gambling thing, systems crashing, like really interesting sort of confluences, overlaps. I don't know, but that's something else that I was thinking about. Mara, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, just because again, for me, it's that interesting thing of like what's different for what are the milestones that each generation experiences anyway, versus what are the things that are unique to each generation. And I think it might have been a tweet or potentially even one of those like threads posts that comes up on Instagram ever so often that was like, why are there so many people in their like late 20s? And it was like, oh, that's because people thought the world was going to end like with the millennium, which again, I didn't double check the data, and then by the time I went to refresh it, it was gone, as these posts sometimes are. But again, I thought there was, what you're saying about like, people feeling like, thinking that the end of the world is imminent, and needing to do something. Does it just come around ever so often?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, with the benefit of age and hindsight, I would suggest the answer is yes, in a lot of respects. But I also think, as much as time is a flat circle, and we experience these, we will ultimately experience these things multiple times. There are two ways to experience it. One is through the lens of Groundhog Day, I'm stuck here. I can't believe this is happening again. And the other way is the Kylie Minogue, Michelle Gondry video where every time she makes a circle, something new happens, and there's a new twist to things. I'm a new twist guy, I guess.
I love that. We should all be.
Yes, for new twists. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so Mara, I have to say, you're the it was the Guardian article that you sent about,
I think it was Independent. Yeah.
The Independent. The idea of Gen Z parenting styles. First and foremost, my first reaction to that was like, Gen Z are parents already? It seems very weird.
Hey, almost 30.
I
it's
know,
feasible. There could
know.
be some with 12-year-olds right now.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, my firstborn was when I was 31, so they are
Gen Z dad right here.
Exactly, I'm a Gen Z dad. But but the other thing about that story that I thought was really interesting was this, the way it was written parsed the survey results in a fashion that suggested that if my kid knocked over a display at a store, 30% of people would help clean it up. 34% of people would apologize to the store. 33% of people would yell at the kid and make the kid do it themselves. And I was just like, wait, so there's nobody that would do all three?
Right.
It
Flawed,
seems so
poll.
odd that the data was parsed in that fashion. And I wondered whether that struck you either.
No, that's a great point, and I wish I paid attention to that more, because I wish I could say yeah, definitely, but that's a great point, because again, it's not as binary as on all that. And I mean,
right.
Yeah, I'm a millennial parent, and I know the cliche with the millennial parents that it's all about permissive parenting, which is almost like the precursor to that. But it's yes, sometimes, but not all the time. And the whole thing, people contain multitudes, and yeah, but yes, Gen Z is old. Yeah, they are parents, and soon it's going to be Gen Alpha.
Right.
Can you imagine just being a parent and walking into a store and little Snorkel knocks over a display, and you're like, Snorkel, clean it up right now. And
Little
you just stand there with your
Snorkel.
hands at your hips, just waiting. Who does that? Nobody does that. It just seems crazy.
Someone does that if they're also simultaneously taking a TikTok or a video of the kid, because you can't multitask when you're doing that.
Store prank
is actually, you know what, Kyle? That's actually that's a really good point. That's a really
I'm joking,
point.
But yes, that is probably some of the parents.
I think there's a good deal of truth in it, because it kind of stopped me in my tracks a little bit, where I was like, oh yeah, right, actually. There are some parents who are just gonna yeah.
I mean, I did not clock that in the story, and truthfully I sort of skimmed it and got the big takeaway, which was a sort of Gen Z's parenting style is quote unquote break the cycle parenting, which I think is what we all think it is. And I think too that the thing that sort of kicked up for me, I literally had a conversation about this a few weeks ago with one of our former guests, Chris, who's also in Barcelona, about sort of how children are often a means to break cycles of the past. And it's just ironic because that often creates tension between you and your parent, in that you are sort of going in a different direction because you recognize some flaws, which is how we as millennials, and I'm not a millennial parent, is how we ended up with gentle parenting and all that sort of stuff. Because the idea to that was I recognize the flaws in quote unquote boomer parenting, which was too strict, too et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to be the nicest parent possible to my own detriment, which I think is why we're seeing a correction. But I would say that is sort of the same idea as break the cycle parenting. But I feel that also, again, is informed by what we just talked about. Is you maybe will take more of a risk. You maybe will do more of XYZ thing to break out of the life that has followed you and the life that you were sort of informed by. That, those connect to me in a way that I'm not surprised by that. It makes sense. I think that's great.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Mara, how do you, as a parent of what I presume are young children or a young child anyway, what do you read that and see yourself in any of those things?
So my kid is actually a teenager, just turned 16. So it is
Wow.
not, but I,
Okay,
so
so
it's more
you and
something.
I are in a very similar boat. We both have 16-year-olds.
Yeah, got the Gen more Gen Alpha. No, sorry, more late Gen Z than early Gen Alpha. But I do see it in my friends that of course they want like who have younger kids. So of course they want to do things right. But then again to the
Right.
generational and remix, like which generation of parents didn't want to do things right for their kids? It's just probably different ways of
Yeah, I
thinking
suppose
what's right.
it is sort of remarkable. I was reading something. I was in the must have been in the FT over the weekend, but it was about how um, wealth and wealth disparity in the current moment is such an interesting phenomenon historically
Mm-hmm.
because for in the art according to the article for 300,000 years there was almost no wealth creation at all. And it was only in the 1800s with the Industrial Revolution, essentially, that
Right.
wealth started to be created across the spectrum of society. Of course, you always had, you know, the feudalists or the royalty or whatever that controlled a lot of wealth. But for the most part, the average salary bought 7 kilograms of wheat for 300,000 years,
Right.
and then only in the last 200 have we experienced these sorts of changes. So if you think of it in those terms, you've got maybe 8, 10, 12, maybe as high as 15 generations where there has been an opportunity to react. And so
Right.
you consequently clock those opportunities to a
Well, the
much
thing that
greater
I was
degree.
gonna say is that, like, almost to Mara's point, and to that point as well, is that like I know Ben and you and I talk about this a lot. Is that like these generational conversations are very modern. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think even if we look back at text probably before the 20th century, they probably weren't necessarily juggling with or really sort of carrying that weight of like how was I parented and how am I going to change that? Like, I don't think that that was the conversation for myriad reasons. Because, like, families were like, you were closer to multiple generations because people didn't live as long and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and had children much more younger, whatever, whatever. Um, and everything was a bit flattened because, like, you were sort of you didn't leave. You weren't able to sort of like go someplace new and reflect in the way that we do now, nor do we have an available history. Like, I can look at photos of like my great great grandfather who was like the descendant of a slave in Puerto Rico. Like, I can do that, but like 500 years ago, like, you would have no idea really. Like, you might have heard like a rumor, but like there's no fact checking of those things. You couldn't have ancestry.com to sort of like look at that. So like that I think is where a lot of these modern things come from, and like maybe they always have existed, but I do think that it's again a response to like I can watch that home video of my parent and be like, I didn't like that, and like I'm gonna change that, which I guess is
Yeah.
good.
Well, okay. So speaking of that, on the flip side of that, Kyle, you sent a story since we're talking about reacting to previous generations. You sent a story about how Gen X hasn't grown up and is still behaving as teenagers and is now as edgelords. And I have to say, and maybe it's because I'm too close to the sun on this one, I didn't totally understand what
Interesting.
the video implied and what you meant by it. So
Interesting.
will you explain,
Yeah,
please?
yeah. So there's like an emerging like line of thought from Gen Z. It's typically Gen Z guys who are talking about an uncle or a dad or something where they're like they sort of share an interaction or liking something like the band Poison, or like the sort of like a glam rock. Well, they
Okay.
weren't glam rock. What were they? Like the big hair, makeup,
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff. Was
Hair
it
metal would be the
hair
hair
metal?
metal.
That's it.
Yeah.
Hair metal. Those sorts of things, and this sort of like counterculturalism that was true. Like, that was counterculture at the time, but like the idea being that a lot, not a lot, but like there is a branch of the Gen X community, let's say probably Gen X men, there probably are women too, they could be the Karen community, you tell me, where they
Karen
are,
community. I just love the idea that there's a Karen community. There's
they're
some
oh
Facebook
they're
group with Karens on it that we just don't know
I am
about, but
sure there
they're
is
there.
100%.
They
But like
all
there's this
identify as
idea that,
Karens.
yeah, that they like were always sort of very countercultural and always sort of like you say yes, I'm always going to say no. And like
Right.
that behavior, which we know is a very teenage behavior, the theory being that like there's a portion of Gen X who didn't evolve out of that. And they spent their whole life sort of like investing in being the sort of like counterculturalist, which now we would call maybe an edgelord. And like I've met the millennial version of that guy, and like he exists. That is
Sure.
a very
Yeah.
millennial, like the millennials definitely took that and ran with it, hence the term edgelord. But like I saw that and I was like, I have met that guy. Like I've met that guy multiple times, and I can
Sure.
see that I can see that being true. I don't think that's true of every Gen X person, but I do
No.
think this sort of like that sort of adopting of having a not necessarily contrarian points of view, but like you know what I'm talking about? Like there's that sort of
I mean, yeah,
sensibility of
yeah.
like
I suppose I do.
outsiderness.
Yeah. I get it. Look, as a 50-year-old with a skateboard by the door, like I totally, I am that guy in a certain respect, right? But what I guess I didn't understand was the way it connected to like what the essential judgment was. It's like, okay, so yes, there are these people and they constantly
Right.
react, they rage against the machine reflexively, not for any good reason, but just cuz. Understand it. But then what?
So that's where the sort of like critique is coming in, is that it's like you have then discussions of say like queer people or like trans people and whatever, and like them sort of being that sort of counter to like, well, no, blah blah blah, and like, well, no, men shouldn't wear makeup, and it's like, well, you wore makeup in high school, what are you talking about? And so it's like
Sure.
that's where the tension is sort of like brewing, where it's like, no, you can't just say no because I say yes. Like that's where I think it's where
Okay,
it's
got
coming
it. So
into. It's
they're
about politics and like how that's
anti by
manifesting.
default.
Yes,
Anti by default.
and that
Okay, got
is becoming a frustration for some younger people, let's say.
I think there's a huge element of like that self-appointed exceptionalism though as well behind that because it's that whole idea of like it applies
Go ahead. That's a great. I was just that's a great turn of phrase. Self-appointed exceptionalism is like really salient.
Oh, thanks. No. But yeah, because it's just that whole idea of like, yeah, these are the rules, but they don't really apply. Like those might be the rules, but they don't really might apply to me. Or that whole idea, like, yes, but I'm actually the exception to the rule, which I mean, again, like less. I feel like there's so many campaigns, like in the marketing world, that use it so well. Like that whole idea of that impossible claw machine that um,
Right.
with the burqa and that you literally couldn't get, and yet people still try to do it. And for me, that just there's something so inherent to. Yeah, I mean, again, yes, of course, this is how it shows up in Gen X with that kind of like I would say contrarianism, but then also that idea of them being like, no, I am actually the exception to the rule.
It,
Hmm. That's intriguing, actually. The claw machine approach. It ties back in a lot of respects to the betting culture
right.
thing
Yes.
a minute ago. No, this lottery ticket is going to hit because it's my lottery ticket
Right.
type of feeling.
Everyone else just scrolls on TikTok. I consume my content mindfully. There was like this TikTok that went
Right.
big, might have been appeared on like other FYPs, but yeah.
It's
The
I am like ordained. It's special for me. For you, that's consumption. Yeah. Oh my God, I love that.
So the other thing that I think is interesting. Sorry, and there's a vector to this. So I went to a book fair over the weekend called Available Works here in New York at 180 Maiden Lane, and this is a bunch of independent booksellers, print collectors, publishers, makers of cool media type collateral, and the thing that I thought was fascinating. So I ran into a friend of mine who said, "Oh yeah, we were there yesterday on Sunday, the third day of the fair," and he said, "Yeah, everything went on Friday in the first 3 hours. All of the good stuff went because the kids, meaning this is probably Gen Z, creatively oriented, art oriented type people, bought everything that was interesting on Friday night during the sort of sneak preview because this is so foreign to them. They don't ever see these things. And so they wanted to get there early and wanted to experience the physical goods. I thought that was one interesting data point, and it makes sense to a certain degree, right? Like when I was in my 20s, I would spend weekends cruising around New York, going into stores and picking up all of the free collateral, all of the free magazines, flyers, whatever they were, right? There were, I mean, this is how Vice started, for instance, but it's like there was just stuff that was available and you didn't have to do anything. You could just go grab it. So I collected all those things. That was one part, and it was interesting to see younger people getting back into it. The second thing, though, that was interesting, and it ties to this last thought we had, I stopped, there's a bookseller called Harper's Books, this guy Harper, who started as a bookseller and is now a gallerist, doors all over the world. At his shop, he had a little bag hanging on the wall, and it said Harper's. Mara, you probably don't know this. Kyle certainly does. My daughter's name is Harper, and so I thought, oh, it'd be funny to get a little tote bag that says Harper's on it. So I asked him, are you selling those? He said, no, we're just giving them away. And then I felt compelled to buy something. So I was looking through the stacks, and on the top of one of the stacks was this book called Wives, Wheels, and Weapons, which is a 3-way collaboration between James Fry, Richard Prince, and Terry Richardson. And
what?
And it was published in 2008, and it's in a limited number, and it was marked down from $40 to $20. And I picked it up and I was flipping through it, and the guy from the bookshop, he was like, yeah, that's been a really hot seller this weekend. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting.
Huh.
And it's just like, yeah, because Terry is back, James never went away, Richard Prince is at the end of his career, but it's
right.
like flipping through it, it's just like the most edgelordy sort of expression of that late aughts period, and the kids were stoked on it, which I thought was just fascinating.
Return of millennial sleaze.
Yeah. Yep. Terry Richardson, come on, y'all, learn your history.
Well, but the thing that was interesting was the guy from Harper's was just like, what did Terry do? And we're not gonna interrogate that on this
all right.
podcast at all. But there was it is an interesting thing of like, in a permissive world, when action is taken, is it permitted, or is permission, I don't know what, like projected and hallucinatory, which I think is maybe the millennial take on a lot of the terrified universe.
Right. Yeah. I mean, hey, that is a very timely thought and conversation about, what does it mean to get canceled, blah, 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 which is like, yes, the thing that I think is interesting to that, and like I've been really quick tangent, is like, I think about this a lot as far as like, sure, I think some people, if you do something shitty, you should get in trouble. But like, I do think there should be a pathway towards reconciliation. Like, do I think that Terry Richardson has done that? No, in my opinion. But like a good example is, and I included this in the Trump Report this weekend, is like the artist John Moss, or the musician. I've long been a fan of, like very, very edgelord guy. That's always been his thing. He had a song called like Cop Killer and Rights for Gays, which like those are in like the 2010s, in the aughts. So like that was somewhat progressive, very much like formative for me. But he was at January 6th with Ariel Pink. And it was like, what are you guys doing here? And so that was a big like, whoa. And like I was then from there like, fuck you, like this is whatever. So he has a new album out now, and he's doing a big sort of like press whatever. And part of the storyline for this new album is he's making amends, and he's like, I thought people would sort of recognize from the songs that I made that I don't believe in that stuff. But he's always sort of been that sort of countercultural edgelord thing, which makes that like, it made sense that he would be there. And like now that he's trying to sort of like undo it in ways that don't fully feel like weighted enough, it's interesting because I'm like, I think that, he is owning it, but like, is there a world, and maybe this is a millennial in me and I can't like uncancel somebody, but like I think about that a lot. I think about the book, I'm forgetting the name of the author, Monsters, which is very like a fan's dilemma is what it's called. It's a very good book about sort of weighing the sins of public figures, and like if you're a fan, at what point do you stop being a fan because of something that is done wrong? Like, do you have to own that weight? Like, what is that relationship like? It's a fascinating read, but like I think about him in that a lot, because like he's at a music festival here. I saw him in a sign for him in Stockholm, and I'm like, I don't expect the Swedish or the Spanish people to know what it means that he was at January 6th. However, I do think it is wild to me that like he gets like a perfectly imperfect interview, and like, you know what I mean? Like that to me, it's tricky. Anyway, all that being said,
well, these weird roads to reclamation, and also just the surprise left turn as well. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene, complaining about ICE raids, very odd. You know,
and to that point, like, is any of this believable? Because, and that's like, you know, maybe a product of the times where it's like, what is truth, quote unquote, but it's like, you tell me who you are, and then like now you change the tune. It's like, okay, now do I believe this now? Because like you've been shitting on XYZ for years, and now it's like,
And
anyway,
and the whole thing, like what's done for shock, especially with the provocateurs, like what's done for shock value, what's done for like, I mean, again, authenticity, truth is dead, authenticity is dead. Like what's done for what purposes, and to what extent do motives matter? To what extent do motives matter versus outcomes? Which again is all over it. That actually reminds me of the you know, you're saying the one of the pre-reads you'd sent about Girlboss coming back.
Oh yeah. Yes.
And Taylor Swift's role in all of this, because what happens when you're a public figure but not a provocateur? I have to say it's like the first like non-ironic use of the word girl boss, or maybe it is ironic, who even knows anymore, that I've seen for years, because for years I feel like it's just been like I've only really seen girl boss in the context of like girl boss, gaslight, gatekeep.
Right.
Which, because I mean it's lost all its like, again, like quote unquote authentic meaning years ago, and no one wanted to still be associated with it.
Which is like, that is, it's so multifaceted. I think Taylor wants us to think like, and like there were many pieces like, Taylor's more online than you think, and I'm like, sure, aren't we all? But like I was like, that specific phrase coming out of a billionaire's mouth who is releasing a new version like every day, and like products are dropping that are like made out of plastic and they're arriving broken. No. You are the epitome of the bad girl boss idea. And like hearing, I believe her name is Sophia Moroso, who like invented the term and did, what was the brand? Oh my God, what was the brand that she had in the 2000s and early 2010s? Or I think it was 2010s. She had a brand. It was like a big LA brand. Fuck.
Oh, Nasty Gal.
Yeah, Nasty Gal. Oh my God, take me back. But her sort of like being like, well, I created this and blah, 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 and sort of like trying to own it. And I was like, correct me if I'm wrong, and I think I am wrong, but like that whole business went down in flames, and it was like it sort of undid the idea of like, you are a girl boss. You know what I mean? And like not to say that she didn't build up a thing, but it was like, okay, you did the exact thing. You flew too close to the sun and you undid blah 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 blah. But like,
I think that's it, and I think that so full disclosure, Sophia and I are friends, or our friend Lee anyway, and correspond from time to time. We haven't seen each other in a long time, but we're friendly. I think, you know, there obviously there's three sides to every story: your side, my side, and the truth, right? And what is, and I couldn't encapsulate Sophia's telling of this stuff. I have also heard it from other people who work with her that have a very different story to tell than she does. But the more so than anything else, the flew too close to the sun thing is that's the through line for all of it, right? Like too far, too fast, got out ahead of its skis and crashed as a result. But it is, I don't think that's necessarily something that somebody should be indicted for, right? Like
no.
Being overly aspirational or
I think
overconfident or
for
whatever the
her,
case, you know.
because she sort of like coined and invented the idea, no. But I do think for Taylor to use it, it is sort of like it's conjuring up the someone like, let's say, quote unquote, like Sophia can and should fail, quote unquote. Taylor won't. And like
Yeah.
that's where it sort of gets really sticky, is like, she can girl boss too close to the sun because she has like titanium wings that will never melt. But anybody else, you're gonna fall. And like that's where it sort of like got really interesting as far as like, the millennial final boss using a millennial final boss term.
It is, yeah, I guess that's true. Although, I mean, this is the first time that Taylor has been widely critiqued and people have noticed or given weight to the critique, right? And you haven't been, diminished or canceled or whatever for the critique. I also think, and it gets back more to the thing that you sent a little bit with that Independent article. Like, one of the styles of parenting is fuck around and find out. A lot of the girl bosses have just been fucking around and finding out from over the course of time, and they just happen to be in our spotlights. I mean, Audrey Gelman, I don't know if you guys know this, but Audrey Gelman went out with Terry Richardson for a long time.
Oh yeah.
I did not. No.
I knew that.
I mean, that like common part of the girl boss narrative is you like take some wild risk, you make a mistake, you walk it back, you do your penance, and then you repeat the cycle again. And over the course of time, you achieve some level of, acceptability, aka the Michelin star for 7 Bells or whatever her new hotel hospitality is.
God, always something. Good.
But I think that actually ties back so nicely to what we were saying earlier about like slot machines, chance, like just trying things, hedging bets and building things up. Because I feel like, again, like obviously the original girl boss movement has its flaws. At the same time, like I was in the perfect era to believe that, very much also believe that narrative and be like very much be like, yes, this is the time to feel like, that there are empowering elements to it, really. At the same time, I just feel like, sorry?
No, I was just saying, of course, I was agreeing with you. Go ahead.
But I feel like then, because of sarcasm and everything, like it has lost and developments, it's lost its original meaning. But now, again, just the way specifically, like nowhere where I see people talking about specifically Girl Boss Too Close to the Sun is serious. Like everyone is just being intensely sarcastic. And I think, again, there are like these two elements to it. I feel like the kind of like backlash against Taylor Swift has been coming up slowly for a while.
Yeah.
And then it's just happened very, very quickly off the back of the album. Like, I mean, again, like, looking at the tail end of Gen Z at my kids' school, it's kind of like the two divisions of is Taylor Swift, like, liking Taylor Swift versus not liking it because it's so mainstream. It's
right.
Yeah.
Do you, Mara? Do you hear? I mean, I'm surprised to hear you hear Taylor Swift mentioned at all at your child's school. Mine is like we're talking about Osama-san and Xavier Sobeist and Tu Hollis, not about Taylor at all. And I mean, obviously there's regional differences and so on and so forth. But I'm a little surprised that the teens are even getting into it because it strikes me as like something that's much more firmly in that older category.
Or younger.
I mean, we are very deep. The school is even deeper in the suburbs than we live. So it's,
okay, fine, fair enough.
Things travel slowly, but no, so there is again the kind of like the smaller mainstream of kids who they grew up with Taylor Swift and they think she's cool, but then of course, or still have a lot of affection for her versus then the other kids who are very, who've, again, whether or not they actually still like Taylor Swift or not, but who very much like moved on with their musical tastes and anything that I would know would immediately by default no longer be interesting.
Well, I think like that's a really good point. It's I think a lot of a 16-year-old, and let's sort of by extension, people who are just a little bit younger, just a little bit older, like that's a very sort of fragile age of like coming to your senses and really sort of like that's when you are starting to define the first inklings of taste and point of view, let's say.
Taste,
which
one of the big
is,
words of the
yeah,
year.
and which is what when, like, you'll be like, no, Taylor is too mainstream or not. And like I think that this sort of like her barreling at this audience now for what every year this decade and whatnot, like it's becoming exhausting. Like you can align that with other systems and being like, no, this is just that same thing but in this sort of like blonde American woman package. So I can see why, like, it all makes sense why there is that sort of like bubbling sort of like sentiment of like this isn't cool anymore. But on top of that, like I would argue, and like I've never listened to a Taylor Swift album, I never will, but like I do think she did girl boss too close to the sun in the ironic way and the literal way, because I think there were just too many strikes against it. It was like, a song called Canceled, this AI sort of like Easter egg thing, the millennial phrases, the like this sort of like over capitalistic things, like, and then the beef with Charlie. It's like it just seemed too petty and unnecessary. And given the sort of zooming out and ties to like, you know, and the NFL, which don't square at all, like it sort of paints a picture that is really not of this time. And like I think it's sort of like we're being forced to be like, no, 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 this is normal. And it's like, no, well, like, no, like groceries are really expensive and I lost my job. What are you talking about? I'm not going to buy a fifth vinyl from you. Like,
I mean, yeah, there I said I wasn't going to talk about Taylor Swift's engagement. But again, the whole phrasing of like your high school English teacher and
yeah,
your football coach got engaged. Like, no.
yeah.
And
And
again, of
it's like,
course, I'm not the only person to say this, but no, you're not.
yeah, you are
That's
almost
when
40 and you're
teachers in
talking.
crisis.
Yes, exactly. And like you're almost 40, you are a billionaire and you're still talking about being like isolated in high school. It's the same thing of like nerds being like, you don't take it seriously. You have all of the movies like dominated for the past decade with fucking Marvel. And it's the same conversation with like Trump et al. It's like, you guys won everything and you're still complaining. Like, it's like, what do you want from us? So it's like,
Well,
it's a funny line that's like the sore winner.
That's interesting. The sore winner. Okay, well let's I guess compare and contrast that for a second. Then, if Taylor is the sore winner, what is Vincenzo Latronico?
That's
So this
a
is
great
this
question.
is Vincenzo Latronico, the author of Perfection, which is a, let's call it, book of the year. No, I don't mean from a like prize winning standpoint, but from a discourse
It
and
book
and
of the
reference
year.
standpoint. It book, right? He has written the It book, and now he is becoming the It boy or something like that, according to the New York Times. So this book is essentially about millennial. It's about the ubiquity and duplicability of a certain kind of millennial aesthetic all over the world, or well, in capitals of cultural capitals all over the world. Can you lean into that effectively without telling on yourself? I guess is leaning in. Go ahead, Kyle.
I look, it's the book is good. It's a very Syrian critique. It's
Did you find it a Syrian critique, really?
I found it to be a Syrian critique, but it was one of those things where it was like I'm critiquing myself. It was like he was holding up a mirror to himself, because I was like it felt like a specific, like, I don't know if it's necessarily a critique, but it sort of held up a mirror in a way where I was like it felt particularly raw as like, an American who does live abroad, and like seeing a lot of the same things and desires playing out in exactly the same way. And like, it's this constant sort of like, less about the pursuit of perfection, which I do think is a thing for a lot of people now because of the internet, but more about this like constant millennial malaise, like just feeling like sort of lost all the time. And like you're waiting to be found or to find the thing that sort of like locks everything into place. And that is what I thought was like, I think that is a very valid discussion. It felt more like it was a critique than actually trying to like engage with it. And I think that is because of I don't know. I think it's just sort of like its proximity, let's say, to trends. That just sort of made it sort of like making fun of it while being a part of it.
Yeah, to me, well, first of all, a disclaimer, I am actually from Berlin, and on my mom's side, going back a lot of generations, but I haven't lived in Berlin for like coming up 20 years.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so first of all, to me, the whole like every time I go back, it's because so many people in my family still live there. To me, it's just so bizarre how English everything has become. Like, it's nice. It
I'm
is nice. It
sure.
is so lovely that it's so international, but I'm also like, why are all the German newspapers now using like English terms?
Yeah.
Right.
And it reminds me a
Interesting.
lot of that whole like millennial coffee shop aesthetic, like the whole idea that like all the
Hmm.
coffee shops, yeah, I mean,
Well,
quite
he
a few things
in
based
that
off
New
that.
York Times piece, he runs into Kyle Chayka, who wrote
Of course.
Airspace, which is the piece about all of the millennial coffee shops looking the same. So, yeah, I mean, it's sort of a weird little meet cute in that regard.
Uh, oh, I didn't actually know that he was the one who wrote that. No, that's
Yeah.
yeah, because I read another one of the article about the AI and the permanent underclass recently, was more recent
Oh,
ones,
yeah, yeah,
but
sure.
that's another topic altogether. But
For another
Right.
pod, yeah.
yeah,
But
but
go
to
ahead,
me,
Mark.
oh no, I was just gonna say, so to me, it's kind of like that balance of, it's very reminded me of that whole idea of like aura farming that came up earlier this year. So the
Right.
fact of
Yep.
like, I will point out this, I'm self-aware enough to point out this thing,
Yeah.
but also I'm pointing out this thing, so I'm kind of above criticism from having pointed out that, but the whole idea of just like how similar the creative, again, on the one hand, it's so nice that there are so many similarities and that, yeah, that people have in common in the creative industries, especially have in common across big cities. On the
Hmm.
other hand, what do we lose?
Right.
Well,
Exactly.
the thing that struck me, Kyle, about something you just said a minute ago is that what perfection does is aptly and fondly and self-effacingly points out the basic behavior of this whole
Hmm.
cohort. What it doesn't do is it doesn't, like the hard space piece, say, actually, this is good for the
Right.
following reasons. What we are actually doing is building on something. And the fact that it doesn't cross the Rubicon to the place of like, why is this valuable, is
Hmm.
maybe one reason that it feels both like a critique and is allowed to, or is able to be critiqued so heavily itself.
Well, I don't think. Yeah. I look, and I think it is a good book. I think it is. It is a good time capsule piece. I think it's a generationally
Sure.
defining
Moment in time, for
piece.
sure.
I don't think it does a good job of, say, not that it needs to, but I don't think it does a good job of sort of reckoning with the system that sort of create the environment that
Hmm.
these people
Mm-hmm.
are sort of stuck in, and sort of like trapped in amber, a beautiful amber, which is the point, but like you're stuck in it and like you can't get out of it, nor do you really want. Like it's like that sort of intoxication is a part of it. The other thing that I will give, credit where credit is due, it is an English translation that's going viral or whatever. So like the book originally is in Italian and came out probably like I think 2 years ago. So like that in and of itself is something that is, he's talking to a time that already has sort of come to pass, and like
Hmm.
it hit right at the exact right time. I don't think if it didn't get the Booker nomination, we wouldn't be having this discussion. But like that was what really crossed it over, because like there were a few breakout of the Booker translations, but like if that didn't happen, it would not have been like a book of the summer, I don't think.
I also really want to read the original one that he says
Yeah,
inspired
me
it, which I
too.
think was from the 60s, like
Yes.
65 or something, because he says he owes so much to, like in the, was it the, New York, was it in the, yeah, New York Times piece where he talks about how, like, he owes so much to the book.
Right. Right.
So I'm just tracking that. It's George Perek's canonical 1965 novel Things, a story of the 60s, about a Parisian couple in marketing who obsessively desire consumer goods and replace the material objects with millennial lifestyle signifiers.
What's
I mean,
I mean,
exactly.
there you
if
there
it
you go.
fits.
So it turns out, guys, time is in fact a flat circle, as we frequently touch upon. All right. Well, listen, we have come to the end, but Mara Dettman, such a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for being here. Where can the proverbial kids find you?
I think the best place would probably be my Substack, which is just Dettmann. I was able to snag that
Oh,
early.
nice. So
Well
that's
done.
Dettmann.
Yes,
Two
exactly. Two
T's, two
N's at the
N's.
two T's, two N's. Yes.
Nice. Cool. And then I know that you said that the LinkedIn newsletter is, I don't know what, a bit overly wrought. You said something to that effect earlier, but to me, I think LinkedIn is actually a fascinating platform. So should we look for you there too?
It says a lot about, I mean, actually,
It says a lot
everyone on
about me.
LinkedIn, I'm
Yeah, for
surprised
sure.
LinkedIn hasn't found perfection yet, because I think if it did, it would be, yeah, it would be a snake eating its own tail.
Yeah.
Wow, the
Well,
perfection Ouroboros on LinkedIn sounds like a record by the Used or something. Oh my God. All right. But Mara, thanks very much for joining us, and yeah, I don't know what to say. We're looking forward to
No,
having you back
thanks.
at some point in the future.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me. It's been, yeah, so much fun reading up on it, and yeah, especially reading Perfection, which I don't think I would have necessarily read otherwise. So,
hey,
yeah,
that's a
thank
treat then.
you.
Hey, love that.
We're here to support books, guys. This is what the Hip
Yes.
Replacement Podcast is all about.
Head book
Literature.
replacement.
Actual
Yeah,
books that are
Actual
literature that
books.
are readable and
And
finishable in a reasonable time frame.
exactly. All right. Well, listen, guys. We're here every week. We record on Mondays. We release on Tuesdays. Big shout to series producer Campbell for putting this all together. Our guest is Mara Dettman, and we are Ben Dietz and
Kyle Fitzpatrick.
Your name. Yeah.
I did it.
And we'll see you again next week. Bye.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.